Hello and welcome to Tech Tips by Norfield. I'm Carl Lewis, Senior Service Technician here at Norfield. In this video, I'll show you how to upgrade the butt router on an early style Magnum to go from the Black & Decker or DeWalt 610 up to the new DeWalt 616 routers. When you receive the kit from Norfield, unbox it, put it on the table, and check to see that you have all of the pieces. It has a set of instructions in the kit. It has a parts list, and so you should go through and identify that you have all of the pieces that you need to get started with. The primary part, of course, is the main assembly with the router. There's another door clamp assembly, in case yours is kind of messed up. This is the mercury switch with the cord. It'll need to be wired in. Vacuum shrouds, miscellaneous hardware, the reference bar, and the pivot bar. The pivot bar will be different if you have a double bevel kit. The machine that we're upgrading already has a double bevel kit with the later bar on it, so we will not be using that on this particular upgrade. Whenever we do any sort of mechanical upgrade to the machine, we should turn off the air and electrical before we start. I've already done that. I've turned off the air and the electrical and locked it out. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to disconnect the air and the electrical from the butt router. So we can remove the air hose from the clamp valve. Simply lay it aside. The electrical box can come off. This will be replaced with the later electrical box. There's one screw in the center and it has a nut on the back side. All right, we will need to take the electrical box off, but first we're going to remove the slide rods. The back of each slide rod there's a 3/8 bolt. We'll use a 9/16 wrench to loosen those. We remove the two bolts at the back of the slide rods, and the whole butt router assembly will come forward off of that, and we can take it over to the bench. Now we can remove the bolt from the center of the electrical box and hold the nut with a wrench and loosen the screw. There we go. So we remove the electrical box. We'll use a 1/4-inch Allen wrench to remove the base to the electrical box. The bolts that hold the base to the electrical box are the same bolts that hold the backstop tab on the router. So we're going to reinstall those now. So we can put the bolts back in the backstop tab. Like that. So we'll use an 1/8-inch Allen wrench to remove the flat jam attachment from the side of the assembly. And we'll remove the two bolts that are in the spacers to the slide rod. Use a 5/32 Allen wrench for that. All right, now that we have the thing disassembled, we can slide the center section assembly off the back of the slide rods. The door clamp assembly can be easily changed. This is the door clamp assembly. Here's the new one here. It's the new one. So we use a 1/2-inch end wrench. We can just unscrew the cylinders from the alignment inserts. In order to use the nuts to screw the cylinder into the alignment insert, sometimes it's necessary to tighten the nut onto the rod a little bit by using a pair of pliers and a wrench, so that the nut does not come unthreaded from the rod as you're screwing it into the alignment insert. So the new door clamp is on. Next we'll change the reference bar. Put the new reference bar on, which goes on like that. The difference between the new reference bar and the old reference bar are these threaded holes at the ends. These will allow you to use a plastic chip breaker to back up the cut when you're mortising the door. So here we're going to use a 3/16 Allen wrench. We'll reuse the two spacers under the reference bar. The reference bar is installed with a narrow end toward the chip breaker and the reference lines away from the bolt heads. And you make sure that the spacer blocks do not stick out past the reference bar on either side. The spacer block should be inset just a little bit. Now we'll take the new assembly that came in the kit, and we can assemble that onto the slide rods in place of the old assembly. The assembly should be assembled with the router clamp facing the forward side of the router. We're going to reinstall the bolts that go through the spacers into the slide rods. You'll notice that on the slide rod there's a recess on one side. That recess is to accept the spacer, so we'll need to make sure that that's turned the correct direction. And we can retighten the bolts at the front of the rods. And that assembly is ready to go back on the machine.